A photograph, faded and creased, captures a group of German prisoners of war lounging under a sunlit tree, smiles barely concealing disbelief. Around them, the camp's manicured lawns stretch wide, bordered by neat rows of white tents and a small wooden cafe, its sign swinging gently in the breeze. The paradox is immediate. Men who expected hardship describe this place as a resort. A broken radio intercepted in April 1944, reveals a whispered conversation between Allied officers. They think this is a holiday. How is this even possible? The prisoners' own reports speak of libraries, concerts, and sports fields, locations unimaginable within the grim confines of a prison camp. Why did these men, hardened by years of war, refuse to believe they were behind barbed wire? What was really hiding behind this illusion of comfort? The origins of these camps trace back to early 1942, when the U.S. military faced an influx of thousands of Axis prisoners captured in North Africa and Europe. The War Department issued guidelines emphasizing humane treatment, partly to comply with the Geneva Convention, partly to counter Nazi propaganda. A blueprint dated March 1943 outlines the initial design of what would become Camp Albright in Tennessee, a sprawling complex with recreational halls, classrooms, and well-ventilated barracks. The camp's architects were military engineers tasked with a dual mission: containment and psychological management. They aimed not just to imprison, but to pacify. Yet, beneath the carefully planned facades, tensions brewed. How did these conflicting objectives shape the prisoner experience? Was the resort a strategic deception or an unintended consequence? Camp Albright, designed to hold 5,000 prisoners, stretched over 200 acres, with barbed wire fences standing merely 8 feet tall. Guard towers were spaced unevenly, sometimes out of direct sight lines, relying heavily on patrols rather than physical barriers. Prisoners were assigned chores, allowed to send letters, and even attended lectures on American culture. Archival records show that in 1943, the average daily calorie intake per prisoner exceeded 3,000, rivaling that of American soldiers. But cracks appeared. Occasional escape attempts, though rare, suggested that some prisoners still doubted the camp's true nature. A map from 1944 reveals a perimeter marked more by symbolic control than by an impenetrable fortress. How did such leniency coexist with the strict discipline expected of prisoners of war? Was this leniency a sign of confidence or a critical vulnerability? The first direct test came in July 1943, when a detachment of Luftwaffe officers arrived at Camp Albright. Expecting harsh conditions, these men were stunned by the presence of a well-stocked library, daily football matches, and a mess hall serving fresh fruit. According to memoirs, one officer noted, "It was as if we had been transported to a summer retreat rather than a prison. Yet beneath the surface, the camp's command monitored every interaction, compiling detailed psychological profiles." This episode challenged prevailing military assumptions. Could humane treatment actually improve prisoner compliance? Or was this merely a facade, masking a more insidious form of control? What did the headquarters fail to notice in underestimating the power of this environment? Enemy reactions were swift and telling. German propaganda broadcasts labeled American camps as soft prisons, accusing prisoners of fraternizing with captors and betraying their homeland. In response, the U.S. military refined its approach, introducing educational programs aimed at re-educating prisoners away from Nazi ideology. Instruction manuals issued in late 1943 emphasized positive engagement rather than coercion. Yet, clandestine reports indicate that some prisoners exploited these freedoms, smuggling information or planning escapes. Camp blueprints from early 1944 show added security measures, a second fence, improved lighting, but the resort atmosphere remained largely intact. How did these subtle countermeasures reflect a deeper psychological battle? Was the line between kindness and control more blurred than anyone admitted? By mid-1944, as the war's tide turned, resources tightened. The camp's protocol shifted. Recreational activities were curtailed, food supplies reduced, and guards instructed to enforce stricter discipline. A faded memo dated August 15th warns of growing complacency among staff, fearing the holiday illusion might lead to security breaches. Prisoners sensed the change, their earlier disbelief giving way to a grudging acceptance of captivity. Yet, even as fences grew taller and watchtowers more vigilant, the memory of those summer afternoons lingered. A map, overlays from 1943 and 1944, show this transformation starkly. Green lawns replaced by barren earth, tents swapped for barracks, fortified with steel. What triggered this sudden shift? Was it fear, necessity, or a deeper realization of the camp's true function? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. In the months following the camp's tightening, whispers circulated among the prisoners. Is this still a resort? Or have we finally glimpsed the prison beneath? A blurry photograph from October 1944 shows a group of German soldiers clustered near a newly erected guard tower, shadows long in the fading light. Their faces, half lit, reveal a mix of resignation and suspicion. Official reports describe a subtle shift in morale, with some prisoners expressing disbelief that such a well-supplied camp could truly be a prison, while others began to grasp the grim reality. A cracked intercom recording, recovered decades later, captures a guard's voice muttering, "They still don't believe it's jail until the fences close in." How did this dual reality persist for so long? What psychological mechanisms allowed prisoners to cling to the illusion of freedom, even as it slipped away? Amid these shifting dynamics, the camp's administration faced growing scrutiny from Washington. A confidential letter from a military inspector, dated November 1944, highlights concerns over security vulnerabilities, but praises the unexpected benefits of humane treatment on prisoner behavior. Meanwhile, prisoners themselves began documenting their experiences in clandestine journals, some smuggling these writings out through sympathetic workers. These personal accounts describe the surreal contrast of daily life, guarded yet comfortable, controlled yet seemingly benign. An archival photograph shows a makeshift theater stage where prisoners performed plays. The backdrop, a painted pastoral scene that starkly contrasted, with the barbed wire glimpsed beyond the camp's perimeter. Was this cultural veneer a coping mechanism or a deliberate tactic? Who truly benefited from this delicate balance? As the European front neared its end, the camp's population swelled with new arrivals, many skeptical and hardened by battlefield realities. According to camp logs, these newcomers were initially disoriented by the camp's atmosphere, some refusing to believe they were prisoners at all. They questioned the kindness, the open spaces, the organized leisure. "How can this be a prison?" one reportedly asked during a roll call in January 1945. Yet, the older inmates, having witnessed the gradual imposition of stricter rules, tried to prepare them for the harsh truth behind the facade. A detailed sketch of the camp's internal layout from the same period reveals a complex network of fences and patrol routes, designed not just to contain, but to psychologically confine. What impact did this cultural dissonance have on prisoner cohesion? Did the illusion of a resort delay their acceptance of captivity's reality? In a stark turn, a confidential report from February 1945 details an incident where several prisoners attempted to exploit the camp's relaxed atmosphere to coordinate an escape. The plan was thwarted swiftly, but it exposed critical flaws in the camp's security doctrine. The ensuing crackdown led to the suspension of many recreational activities and tighter surveillance. An official camp photograph, dated days after the incident, shows empty sports fields under a gray, overcast sky, the laughter and noise replaced by silence and watchful eyes. Prisoners' letters, intercepted and logged, reveal growing frustration and a dawning sense of entrapment. How did this rupture affect the fragile trust between captor and captive? Was the resort illusion irreparably shattered, or did it persist in quieter, more insidious forms? By spring 1945, the distinction between camp and prison became undeniable. A map overlay from March shows reinforced fencing, guard towers equipped with searchlights, and a new security perimeter doubling the camp's footprint. Yet, reports from the same period describe prisoners organizing informal discussion groups, debating the camp's paradoxical nature. One captured diary entry reads, "We lived in a resort made of barbed wire, where freedom was a distant echo." The camp staff, aware of international scrutiny, maintained a veneer of civility. But inside the wire, the psychological battle raged on. A final haunting image from April 1945 shows a lone prisoner staring out through the fence toward the distant hills, the setting sun casting long shadows over the landscape. What did freedom mean to men who had known captivity disguised as comfort? Was this camp an anomaly, or a harbinger of modern warfare's evolving approach to imprisonment? In the final weeks before Germany's surrender, the camp's atmosphere grew heavier. A series of intercepted letters between camp officers, dated late April 1945, hint at growing anxiety. The men sense the end, yet the fences remain. Morale is fragile. Photographs taken during this period show prisoners gathered quietly near the fence line, their faces etched with exhaustion and uncertainty. Outside, the world was changing rapidly, but inside Camp Albright, the paradox of their existence persisted. A prison that resembled a resort, yet was no less a cage. Surveillance logs reveal increased nighttime patrols and tighter curfews, as if the camp's leadership feared that the illusion of freedom might unravel completely. How could such a delicate balance hold so close to the war's end? Was this lingering illusion a final act of psychological control, or the prisoner's desperate refusal to accept reality? Meanwhile, efforts to document the prisoner's experiences intensified. An engineer assigned to camp communications in early 1945 compiled a secret report contrasting the American model with the brutal conditions of German camps. His notes describe the unbelievable contradiction of prisoners who could walk freely, attend classes, yet were shackled by invisible chains. A faded map included in his dossier overlays the camp's recreational areas with guard posts, highlighting the calculated design behind the seeming openness. This duality, he wrote, was a psychological fortress, as formidable as any physical barrier. What lessons did the U.S. military draw from this experiment? Did they foresee its implications for future conflicts, or was it an unacknowledged moral compromise? As liberation loomed, a final twist emerged. Several prisoners, long convinced of the camp's resort-like nature, expressed shock when informed they were free to leave. Testimonies from May 1945 describe moments of disbelief, hesitation, even fear, as if freedom itself was a foreign concept. A grainy photograph captures a small group hesitating at the camp's main gate, the barbed wire still cutting sharply against the bright sky. Psychological evaluations conducted post-war suggested that this protracted illusion had created a form of captivity beyond physical confinement, a mental imprisonment that lingered even after the fences fell. How did this lasting impact shape the memories of those who survived? Did the resort become a cage of the mind, harder to escape than steel and wire? Within the camp administration, conflicting reports reveal a growing awareness of this paradox's complexity. A memo from a senior officer in May warns of the dangerous complacency bred by comfort, urging stricter enforcement of discipline in future camps. Yet elsewhere, evidence points to a reluctant admiration for the model's effectiveness in maintaining order without violence. The tension between humanitarian ideals and military necessity remained unresolved. An archival blueprint, marked with revisions from early 1945, shows plans for increased surveillance technology and automated barriers, signaling an end to the era of soft prisons. Was this shift a concession to realism or a retreat from a failed experiment? Who ultimately decided the fate of this controversial approach? As the dust settled, the story of these camps emerged as a layered narrative, a place where kindness and control, illusion and reality intertwined. Prisoners' voices, once muffled by silence and censorship, began to surface in memoirs and interviews decades later, revealing the profound psychological contradictions they lived through. A final archival image shows a worn wooden bench beneath a solitary oak tree, its shadow stretching over cracked pavement, a silent witness to a paradox few dared to question at the time. What does this reveal about the nature of captivity itself? Can a prison ever be a resort, or is every illusion ultimately a chain waiting to be broken? In the years following the war, declassified documents and personal testimonies peeled back layers of the camp's carefully constructed illusion. Veterans' memoirs reveal that many German prisoners grappled with a deep cognitive dissonance. The comfort they endured clashed violently with the reality of their captivity. One former lieutenant described how the camp's manicured gardens and scheduled concerts felt like a cruel joke, a paradise with invisible walls. Meanwhile, military historians uncovered correspondence between camp commanders and Washington officials debating the ethics and efficacy of such treatment. A weathered report from 1946 concluded that while the resort-like conditions reduced violence and escape attempts, they also blurred the line between humane treatment and psychological manipulation. How had these blurred boundaries influenced post-war reconciliation and memory? Did the camp's paradox leave scars deeper than physical imprisonment? Archival footage, recently restored, shows former prisoners returning to these sites decades later. Their faces, aged yet haunted, reflect moments of reflection and unresolved trauma. A still frame captures one man tracing the outline of a fence post, voice trembling as he recalls, "We were free to walk, to talk, but never truly free." This lingering ambivalence challenges simplistic narratives of captivity. The resort was both sanctuary and trap, a place where the concept of freedom was carefully curated and controlled. Official war records, once silent on these psychological dimensions, now acknowledge the uneasy success of this approach, a tactical innovation shadowed by moral ambiguity. What responsibility does history hold in preserving these contradictions? How do we reconcile compassion with control in the theater of war?